Welcome along to another episode of My Football Story from the Honest Football Podcast. This week, we're lucky enough to speak to football commentator Ian Crocker. From growing up in Weymouth, we discuss Ian's love for football, as well as his distinguished career in TV and radio football commentary. We discuss the main differences between commentating on the two, as well as some of the competitions that Ian's best known for covering. This includes Ian's work on Premier League matches, covering a World Cup, Scottish football, which he's become synonymous with in recent years, as well as covering that famous Scotland game just a few weeks ago. If you enjoyed the episode, please do put a thumbs up on it, subscribe down below for regular content and interviews from the podcast. But this is Ian Crocker's football story, and we hope you enjoy it. Okay, I'm delighted to be joined by Ian now, and we always start the same way. You've obviously had a very illustrious career, but we want to go back to your first football memory and the thing that made you fall in love with the game. So whether it's watching, playing, what's the first thing you remember about the game?
Well, I grew up in a little village called Sutton Point in Weymouth, in Dorset, down on the south coast. A lovely village, but quite sleepy. And Weymouth were my local team. They were non-league. Okay. And I started watching them and just got into football that way. And it was great because, you know, it was proper grassroots football for me at a young age. I just loved it. We used to go to away games. We actually had some decent players over the years, like Graham Roberts, who went on to greater things, of course, with Tottenham and Rangers, and Steve Claridge, Andy Townsend. There was quite a few that played for Weymouth along the way. They were quite a good non-league club then. They were like runners-up, I think, at the end of the 70s in what is now the National League. So it was good times, and we got to the third round of the FA Cup once, and we're 2-0 down at Cardiff with 20 odd minutes to go and won 3-2. I still quote that memory and the way it made me feel as one of the high points of my life.
Do you remember the first game you went to watch live in the stadium?
I think it's against Merthyr Tydfil. I've got a feeling. Can't remember the score or anything, but just the excitement of it all. I mean, I would have been 9 years old, if that, maybe even younger. And just the buzz of going to football was great. I used to take my little transistor radio and listen to all the other scores on what was Sport on 2 then, now 5 Live, and just have that blaring out of the ground so everyone could listen. So, yeah, really happy memories of watching non-league football as a kid.
And what about playing? Did you play much when you were younger? And if so, how was your experience?
I played a bit at school, but I wasn't that good. I scored an absolute screamer on the playground once, which was talked about for minutes. But that was as good as it got, really. I was never a very good player, so I decided to go down the avenue of maybe the next best thing.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. But what about your sort of teenage years and your love for football progressing? Obviously, you mentioned Weymouth initially, but then talk about other teams that you got into and how that came about.
Yeah, well, when I was 9 years old, I mean, if only we could think like this now, you know, it was quite simple. I thought, right, I need to follow a proper team as well, like a professional team. So I started having a look around, and Weymouth play in terracotta and blue. So I thought, oh, what about a team with the same colours? That'll work, you know. And West Ham, I remember beaten Leicester, I think, 6-2 and Burnley 5-3. And I thought, oh, they'd be a good team to follow. And that's simply how it happened. And funnily enough, that was the year later on that season they went on to win the FA Cup. They beat Fulham in the final when Bobby Moore turned out for Fulham, ironically. And then we won the FA Cup again 5 years later, 1980, beating Arsenal. And in fact, I think West Ham was still the last team from outside the top flight to win the FA Cup that year. So I thought, this is great. A couple of FA Cups already. One bugger all since. But hey, you commit at a young age, and everyone knows how it gets you, and you got to stick with it through thick and thin.
I was going to say, you didn't know what was coming when you took that one on, did you?
No, but you wouldn't change it for a bit. And luckily enough, I got to work there, which was a dream come true a bit later on in life, although not that later on, actually. But yeah, smashing club. And I know all football fans can be funny, but I just love the humour of the West Ham fans, sometimes having experienced it as one myself when we were sort of standing in the pouring rain watching West Ham lose 6-0 at Oldham in a League Cup semi-final on Valentine's Day in 1990, I think, or 91. You remember them as good memories.
I'm bringing back the painful ones, but let's talk about the first West Ham game you went to. Do you remember that as well?
Yeah, I think it was against Crystal Palace, and I stood on the old North Bank at Upton Park, which was terracing back then. Yeah. It would have been I moved to London to work when I was 17, so it would have been around that time, 17, 18. And coming from a little village in Dorset, the big city in London was quite a big step up. Even now, when I think back to it, some of the things that I saw and survived in my time living in Bedsit land was extraordinary at that age. It's certainly an eye-opening experience listening to the West Ham fans on the terracing back then. But again, an awful lot of humour and banter, and just a great experience.
And let's go back to you growing up. At what stage, you mentioned that you didn't play a huge amount, but at what stage did a career in football become a possibility? At what age did you think it was gonna happen, and what route did you take to get there?
I was quite a young age when I got really interested in newspapers and journalism. I thought I want to write about football in newspapers. That was my initial plan. And then, you watch and you listen to Sport on 2 as it was then, the great voices from the past like Peter Jones, Brian Butler.
Yeah.
Just superb. And I thought, I tell you what, that would be a good job to have as well. But I kind of stuck down the newspaper route for a while and applied for a job on the Dorset Evening Echo in Weymouth, but I never got it. And I think if I had got that, my life would have been totally different. So things always happen for a reason is my motto, even though it sounds boring when you say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I moved to London, basically took an office job just to get to London, but eventually got another office job at the BBC and kind of worked my way in there a bit, but couldn't get into the broadcasting side of things. So it was a long road getting there, it felt at the time. But yeah, from quite an early age, it was either newspapers or then I kind of liked the idea of the radio, never dreaming for 1 minute that I'd actually be doing it one day on radio initially and then telly.
Well, that was going to be my next question, really, is a lot of the commentators you see interviews with or you see them looking at their careers, it's always about the big moments on TV. But for almost all of them, it always starts in radio. So talk to me about that, because growing up, I mean, it's what I relied on for football. I'm sure it's the same for you a lot of the time. How did it come about and how did you feel doing it? Because to me, that's sort of the origin of football. You're painting the picture for the fan.
Yeah, I love radio, and I actually miss. I try to do a bit of it now and again, but it's difficult. I love it because you are exactly that, painting the pictures for the listeners. So I managed to get a part-time job at West Ham doing the tannoy announcing, which is obviously the job of my dreams, working for the club I support. And it was a great time in the 1980s. Billy Bonds was around, and John Lyall, and a few like that, just good people. But anyway, through that, I met Jonathan Pearce, now at Match of the Day, and various other broadcasters who was running Capital Radio in London. Yeah. And he had that kind of unique style of excitement, and it was brilliant what he did. And it was pioneered by Richard Park, actually, who was at Radio Clyde in Glasgow and then took over the Capital Group. And Jonathan was brilliant at it. And we had a good team, like Julian Waters, now at Sky Sports News, Steve Wilson, Match of the Day, Dave Clark, who did the darts so superbly until recently, Rob Watson, Sky Sports News. We all worked together. There's a really good team. So I got to do that for a couple of years working for Capital Radio. But Jonathan and the other guys were kind of ahead of me in the queue. So they took over BR&B Radio in Birmingham and got a chance to go up there, and Commentators are number one. I really enjoyed it so much so I ended up living there for nigh on 25 years old, covering Aston Villa, Birmingham, West Brom, Wolves. Great football patch. And at the time, it was when I was doing the radio, it was bigger on at Villa and Barry Fry at Birmingham. So there was never a dull moment with those two around. But yeah, absolute joy doing radio. Loved it and still do.
I guess moving forward, obviously we do have to then get to TV eventually. Is how did your transition come from radio to TV? And was it something you were worried about?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I got lucky on this because I was working on the sports desk at Capital one Monday morning and doing the breakfast shift. So you have to get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock, as I know many people do, but I wasn't very good at it. But anyway, it got to lunchtime and there was something in the diary. Nobody was in because everybody took Monday off unless you did the breakfast shift, because obviously they worked at the weekend. So it was an event, a Sky Sports event at Terry Venable's club in West London called Scribes. I was knackered after a long weekend covering games and the breakfast shift, and I thought, I don't want to go to that. And I tried to get out of it, but I think Jonathan told me someone's got to go to represent Sky, and so I had to go in the end. Ended up sitting next to a guy called Vic Wakeling, who was the head of Sky Sports for many years. And obviously, by the time I'd had a couple of glasses of wine, I was suggesting to him that I'm going to be working for you one day and all that sort of stuff. And I was actually a rookie commentator by then, but fair play to him. He obviously remembered or was fed up with me pestering him, but a few months later, he offered me a chance to do Bundesliga commentaries. This was the early 1990s, and they were done from Sky off tube, as we say in the business. So that's how I kind of got into telly, and it was very different. They gave me a couple of live Premier League games, which was probably too early in my career to do, because I kind of did them in a radio style. It didn't really work, and I occasionally hear them back these days and cringe because it was pretty bad. But yeah, thankfully Sky kept giving me gigs and took a chance on me, which, considering I was fairly inexperienced at the time, I will always be grateful for. And from then on, it kind of escalated.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but you've actually led to a question I wanted to ask perfectly. It's something that probably as fans we take for granted and miss out, but the difference between radio and TV commentary, where you're painting the picture on the radio and on the TV, obviously the picture's already there. What are the biggest differences from a rookie point of view, the bits that we wouldn't notice behind the scenes? What's your biggest adaptation when you're doing one or the other?
Not to talk as much, although I probably do still talk as too much. Listen, I still do things to this day where you say something and you think, oh, why did I say that for? People can see it because I did radio for quite a few years, and you just so get that is the difference. On radio, you have to say where the ball is, you have to paint the pictures, who's doing what, this, that, and the other. And TV, you don't to some extent, but you still find yourself stating the bleeding obvious, like it's even something like it's gone out for a corner, or it's. I mean, people can see. Sometimes you don't have to say it, but. Yeah, the difference is that you can have silences obviously much more on television, and they actually work quite well. I mean, Barry Davis was a master at leaving a good silence after a goal. Not many of us do that these days. I certainly don't, but it does work. I've seen some of the stuff from the past, from the era of English commentators that I grew up with, like Brian Moore, Barry, and John Watson.
Yeah.
Yeah, the silence, was good. But there are so many of us out there now. I certainly babble too much still sometimes. I might get the hang of it one day. We'll see.
I'm sure you're not doing too badly, to be fair. But let's go back to your TV start. Obviously, you mentioned you're starting to get your break at Sky Sports. How did you find that sort of progression? Because obviously for us, we just sort of see you and a commentator come through and doing sort of a European game or a lower league game, and then suddenly in the Premier League. But what's that transition like for you behind the scenes? And does it phase you still when you move up a level for the first time? Does it still phase you when you're doing that?
It did back then, certainly, when I was swapping between radio and television. I found it tricky. I remember doing my first radio commentary with Steve Wilson, actually. We did a joint effort on Barnet Carlisle one cold Tuesday night in November. It was hard work, and I wasn't very good at it. But, yeah, television was different. We did a lot of sort of Saturday 3 o'clock games for highlights initially. So it wasn't actually live as such. But, you still learnt the ropes in a good way because they were decent games. I was lucky enough in the end of the 90s to do Manchester United quite a lot in the 3 o'clock kickoffs when they won the treble because there weren't so many live games then. So good times. But you just try and embrace and give it your best shot and try and capture the moment. That was always my thought. If you can add something to this, I mean, the players are doing what they do. If you can add something to it with a decent line, then hooray.
Absolutely. I want to ask you a little bit, and I'm not going to get into the controversial side of it, but when you moved from Sky to Setanta, because obviously in the UK, Setanta just burst out of nowhere and became this massive thing.
Yep.
And I guess for you, it's obviously a chance to go back to regular live Premier League commentary on TV, which I don't think any fan would turn down. But when you look back on that, it's a bit of a bizarre situation because it all went up in flames within a few years. But what were your sort of memories of that transition?
Yeah, a couple of years, I think it was, since you remember. Well, it was quite simple, really. I mean, Sky have been great to me, but they had so many decent commentators, Martin Tyler, Rob Hawthorne, Alan Parry, Moore. And I thought, I'm not going to get past these guys. They've been doing it for years. They have got the hang of it. And I got the opportunity, not only to do the Premier League, actually, but also to start doing the Scottish again, because they had that contract at the time. And at the time, it just seemed like, why not? Let's have a go at it, do a bit of Premier League and see where it goes. And, hindsight, you look back and you think, well, certainly 2 years later when they went bust, I looked back and thought that wasn't such a good idea. I'm not one to have regrets because you do what you do at the time. And it seemed like a good idea at the time, but obviously it all went splat.
Before we go on to Scottish football, which I know is obviously a big part of your career, particularly the last 10 years or so, I want to talk to you about commentating at international tournaments. Because it's something that probably it's where it grips a whole nation. Even people who aren't general football fans on a weekly basis will tune in for those tournaments, whether it's highlights or whether it's live games. What's that sort of experience like, being involved in that sort of bubble for a month?
Yeah, absolutely amazing experience. I was lucky enough with Capital to cover Euro 96. Which was in England, obviously, and I covered Scotland quite a bit. I was at the Scotland game the night England thrashed Holland and then let a goal in to deny Scotland a place in the knockout phase, although, to be fair, Scotland should have won about 5-0 against Switzerland. But that was great fun with the colour of the Dutch fans and the Tartan Army and everybody. Superb tournament. And 2 years before that, I went to USA 94, the World Cup, again, covering it for Capital. Went to New York, Boston, Los Angeles, and that was just incredible. Great experience over there. And I went to the World Cup final as well in '94 because I thought, if you're working for Sky, obviously most of the tournaments are on terrestrial television. I was thinking, will I ever get a chance to go to a World Cup final? I thought, this is my chance. I'm going. I managed to get a ticket. It wasn't a great game. It was Brazil, Italy, wasn't it? And it went on for forever, extra time in the searing heat of the Pasadena Rose Bowl. But hey, that was the only World Cup final I got to, so I'm glad I went. And then in 2010, I worked for ITV at the World Cup in South Africa, and that was an interesting experience, based largely in Johannesburg. But yeah, great camaraderie amongst the team that would be out there for anybody, really, whether it's Sky or ITV. You'd all be pretty close to each other for a month. The way ITV did it is that you had an apartment block that took over. So I was sharing that with Chris Coleman, former Wales manager, and that was an experience as well. I remember going to shopping with him in Johannesburg, and I think we took a wrong turning in the taxi and ended up near a township. And then we just thought it'd be an idea to get out of the taxi because he didn't know where he was going. So we're wandering the streets with loads of shopping and toilet paper and things like that. These are the stories you can safely tell 10 years later, but at the time it was actually a bit scary wandering around Johannesburg.
That's the other bit I wanted to ask of it, really, is so often people see the glamorous side when you're in a 70,000, 80,000 seater stadium commentating on a game. But one of the things that's come, I mean, we've spoken to a couple of reporters who do Soccer Saturday and things like that, and it's the unglamorous bits behind the scenes that you never expect or realise. I mean, they must be more than few and far between, it would be fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly some experiences on that trip, and the security was very tight, and there were some areas we were told, you don't go near, don't do this, don't do that. But listen, it was still a fascinating experience covering it. But yeah, the glamorous side of it is obviously the games. I mean, a lot of the downside of it is traveling, because trying to get to places these days seems to be harder than ever with airlines and trains and even driving. But what the job actually entails in terms of watching football kind of makes up for a little bit of a few issues along the way. Actually getting to these places, you can't. People say, "Oh, you don't realise how lucky you are to do this job." I can assure you, each and every commentator does know how lucky they are.
And going back to more domestic matters, I guess Scotland has its fair share of grounds that are quite difficult to get to, in fairness. But it's become a massive part of your career over the last 10 years. And I know you still do Premier League as well, and that's something I want to lead on to as well. But how have you found being involved in Scottish football regularly? And I guess more from an English point of view, do you feel it gets a bad reputation? Because the quality's pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I've been covering it for 22 years, although I actually did my first Scottish game for Grampian TV and Aberdeen playoff in 1995, but started the Sky stuff in 98. Yeah. And love it. What I always say is I love the passion, not just of the fans, but of the players. Every single player plays from the heart. You can see that. In some of the more illustrious leagues, maybe sometimes players aren't giving it their all, perhaps, but in Scotland, they certainly do that. And I just love watching it. We've got obviously the big two clubs that, but it's not just about them. Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen. Great to have Dundee United back in the top flight this season. One of my favourite gantries. I mean, when we used to do the Scottish Cup and we used to go to, the lower league teams and all that, that's what I really loved as well because, there were proper old grounds. I mean, Somerset Park, Ayr, everyone should pay a visit one day. That is proper old school, and Arbroath right by the North Sea. Albeit a bit windy and nippy, but no, I really enjoyed it. And I have to say, I don't get much from down south, banter-wise, about the state of Scottish football. I think we certainly know what we've got in Scotland. You can get bad games in any league. I've certainly seen a few elsewhere outside Scotland.
Yeah.
But generally, what we have is pretty good, and we all like it here. We don't really care what other people think about it either. We just get on and do it and enjoy it.
No, it's the best way to be. But I think the question I wanted to ask you probably the most, as you're one of the few commentators who have regularly commentated on both the Scottish Elite and the English Elite game, is how do you compare the two in terms of style? Because we watch it as fans. Obviously, some give it a bad rap. But what do you see as the biggest differences between the two leagues when you're watching?
I find it hard to compare the two leagues because obviously they're very different. I mean, and we always do. We compare it up here as well. But it's so different because of the financial... The Premier League has become so massive now that it is hard to actually compare. I wouldn't say I see more bad games in Scotland than in England. If anything, it'll be 50-50 perhaps. Yeah. But I just like, as I say, the passion of the game in Scotland and everyone surrounding it, and the banter, as long as it doesn't get out of hand, is pretty good as well. And we love it. So I find it hard to compare really, because I think the Premier League is on a distant planet compared to most actual other leagues.
Looking at the passion, something you mentioned about, one of the biggest things I wanted to ask you about the last decade or so in Scottish football in particular is quite a lot of the biggest derbies have been starved for quite a while. Obviously, you had years without the Old Firm, quite a few years where the Edinburgh derby they haven't been in the same league, and the same for Dundee as well. Do you think that's had a knock-on effect, or is that something you've noticed as a commentator, not having as many of those fierce games?
Yeah, I definitely noticed it when we went in the Old Firm. Crikey, I don't know how I got through those years. They're the games that we all want to do. Same with the Edinburgh Derby. Dundee Derby, I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of. Always a good one. So yeah, they were sorely missed. It's typical, isn't it? Only in Scotland could we actually manage to not have those derbies for a few years when they are some of the best games you'll get.
Yeah.
You know, Rangers getting demoted to the bottom division is still, for me, hard to fathom. You know, it's an argument I don't bother to get into much these days because you just get a load of stick. But you know, really, it was amazing that they were out of the top flight for so long. But you know, we've had them back for a while now. Obviously, we've lost the Edinburgh Derby, but I think we'll get that back next season.
Yeah.
It was for me hard to see Hearts relegated, but they did have a shocking season in fairness. But it was hard to see them relegated because of COVID. And maybe get the Dundee back as well. And I know Inverness, Ross County, you'll probably be angling for a mention as well, the Highland Derby. Yeah, you can't beat a derby. Obviously, the Glasgow one is, I've commentated on, I think, 60 of them now.
Wow.
Every single one of them has been, what's the word? Interesting, shall we say. That's probably not the right word. Compelling, my wife just shouted out. Compelling.
It's a good suggestion.
Just her to get a better word than me. Yeah.
I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about the commentating side and some of the unique quirks of it. And one of the things, you've mentioned it a couple of times with particular grounds, is the gantry. From your sort of experience, you've probably commentated at a large majority of the professional grounds in the country. What's your favourite gantry to commentate on, if you had to pick one?
If I had to pick one, in Scotland or in England or in both? A bit of both.
Across the UK.
Across the UK, I probably would have to say in my favourite, because I did them for quite a lot of the Fergie years, I'd have to say Old Trafford, because there was something about getting to Old Trafford when for a 3 o'clock game, you'd be there, I'd get there about 11, and the place would be absolutely mobbed round. You couldn't move even at 11, 4 hours before kickoff. And just the gantry was at a really good height, really good view. If I'm being sentimental, I'd just said Upton Park, West Ham's old ground. And in Scotland, Tannadice for me I like gantry as a perfect height where you're at just the right angle. Celtic Park's good, but maybe a little high, and Rangers good, but maybe a little low. Although at Rangers, without the fans, sadly, we've hijacked the upper tier and put the scaffolding in at the top of there just to get a slightly better view. But Tannadice is good. But then, you know, I'll go back to Arbroath, with the only ground in the country where I was told to put a harness on to avoid being blown into the North Sea on a windy night. So that always stands out for me. I didn't bother wearing the harness, and it certainly was windy. But I did well to hang in there and not end up in the North Sea.
You've led on perfectly again, because this year, probably for unfortunate reasons, we've obviously been without fans a little while. And I have to ask you, as I have a couple of others, the experience of commentating in a stadium when there's no fans. I mean, I was in a hotel at Milton Keynes Dons, for example, watching a game there, and it was just bizarre seeing it out the window with nobody there. So for you, who's doing that regularly, what's that experience like?
Yeah, bizarre is the word. I know, it's just so weird. I still can't get used to it. I don't want to get used to it, but it's so strange. We turn up at say for an average game, probably about 3 hours before kickoff, but you can't go into the stadium because there's nowhere to go apart from the gantry. So you sit in your car, but you think, well, I better get there in case the traffic's mad or whatever. So you sit in your car for a bit, and then you go straight to the gantry through designated routes. You know, you can't go near the red zone where the players are, fair enough. So there's nothing to really do and nowhere to go. So you just sit on the gantry, which was fine when we did the summer games, but now it's getting a bit cold, you know, for a couple of hours. It can be a challenge. And then the game starts, and it's weird. I actually have crowd effects in my headphones when I'm commentating because I feel I need something to get above. Because, you know, obviously the fans make a difference to the players, but also make a difference to us, you know, in the way that they react. But yeah, sometimes when that hasn't happened for whatever technical reason, it's really strange when you can hear all the shouting and sometimes swearing, which we end up apologising for, going on. It's been an eye-opener in that respect. But, you know, fans make football, and every time we do a game, I keep saying we mustn't say at the end of it, wow, what would that be like with fans in, like Aberdeen, Celtic the other week, and this, that. Even Burnley Crystal Palace Monday night, which I quite enjoyed, and Burnley had been struggling and they were battling on, great performance, and that's a proper old ground where the fans would have made themselves heard. But I still do say it at the end of every game, what would it be like with fans in? Brilliant, especially after the Old Firm as well, which was surreal. But it looks like we're getting there gradually, slowly but surely, albeit with a few for starters. I think we could get a few more in than what we're trying in Scotland, to be honest, but that's for other people to decide. And obviously they're trying it out in England now, so can't wait for the day. I long to be stuck in a post-match traffic jam because I can't even get used to that. The full-time whistle goes, I leave and drive out of whatever town or city straight away with nobody there.
Probably some slight perks then.
Well, I suppose you could say that, but I now actually long to be stuck in a post-match traffic jam. That's my ambition now.
I guess one game that we have to mention this year where you talk about the impact of fans had they have been there is you obviously commentated on that moment for Scotland just a few weeks ago as it is now.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that game because obviously, as you say, you've been covering Scottish football for well over 20 years and you're in that moment where any of us, we're neutrals, we're watching that game, we're tense for a penalty shootout. How as a commentator do you keep your composure and get the story across to the fans without becoming a fan?
I might have actually become a fan that night because obviously covering Scotland for 22 years, I've become very close to them and probably follow them more than I do England now. It was some night because I thought they'd blown it when they let an equaliser in the 89th or 90th minute. In fact, when he went out for a corner, I remember saying in commentary, I actually feel sick now because a whole nation that is Scotland knew exactly what was going to happen next because we've been in this movie before many a time. Sure enough, Luka Jovic, completely unmarked, heads home. I actually thought it had gone on the roof of the net to start with because it was a strange bouncing one. But anyway, extra time, Scotland's certainly the better team in 90 minutes. Extra time, Serbia better. But it goes to penalties and you're thinking, well, this would be typical Scotland to actually lose having played so well and been ahead. And for once, we had a different ending and a happy ending. And I was pleased not just for the players, because I think they deserve a crack at a tournament, this bunch, but obviously for the fans. And Scotland would have had about 10,000 fans in Belgrade. Whether they could have got a ticket or not, they'd have been in Belgrade watching in the bars, if not in the ground. They'd just gone out for the experience. And it's a real shame. I know Rory Hamilton, a fellow commentator, who said that he's a big Scotland fan as well. He goes to every game. And he said, typical after all this time, following Scotland, willing them to qualify for a major tournament. They finally qualified while I was sitting on the sofa with the dog. And I thought that summed it up perfectly for so many fans. And I'm just pleased they've done it. And hopefully, by the time the tournament comes around, a couple of games at Hampden Park, obviously one against England as well. It wouldn't surprise me with Scotland to go and get a draw or something at Wembley because, one thing I think we're good at sometimes sort of talking about the opposition and how good they might be. But Scotland have a decent squad, Premier League players, Celtic and Rangers players, even boys from Motherwell who stepped up to the breach brilliantly. So really pleased. But when David Marshall was checking to see whether he'd moved off his line with the referee, I was thinking, I so hope he hasn't because I was already away with the fairies by then, shouting out lines and quoting from Flower of Scotland. So I'd have been backtracking into reverse gear big time if it had been disallowed. But I just once he gave it the okay, that was it. I was away, having waited 22 years to come up with a few lines about Scotland qualifying. So I was really delighted that it happened on my watch.
Absolutely, and I guess you've led on to another thing that's come about probably in the last year or so, which is commentating on games that include VAR. Now, I don't want to get into the politics of it because obviously it's a massive controversy, and as you've probably alluded to something earlier, you can't win an argument about it. But what's it been like commentating on that? Because it must take away, like a footballer celebrating, it must take away a lot of your instincts.
Yeah, although I think the way most of us decided to do it was, well, just commentate and then see what happens. But I mean, I've had a couple of times where I've gone full welly on a goal and it's been disallowed. I'm thinking, I did quite a good line on that goal as well. It's never going to be heard, ever. No, for me, it's been, I think it's in the way it's been applied. We commentators sat through a few meetings about it with the referees at Stockley Park, with the guys in charge rather. And, the initial theme was that it would only be used for clear and obvious errors, which I think is fair. But now it seems to be, it's become like forensic. And I think that's a problem. Listen, I've seen the guys doing it at Stockley Park, not actually, it was a rehearsal when we went to see it. And it's some operation. And they actually made us look at a few incidents and decide what the correct outcome should be, and I was utterly hopeless. I missed about 3 incidents in the build-up and said, oh, well, that should be a penalty, that should be offside. Listen, they're the professionals, they get it right. But I just think we've gone down a road where we're now looking at everything so forensically, and it definitely takes away. But then some people will say, well, a lot of the decisions are proved to be correct, but I don't think you'd find many players complaining if you've got an offside call that is so tight. You need to look at it 20 times to work it out.
No, I completely agree with that. I guess before we get too involved in the controversial side of VAR, we need to move back to commentary, and we need to reflect on some of the highlights of your career. I've got quite a long list of these ones, but some of your favourites as we go along, because it would be rude not to. I want to ask you, in a stadium, the best player that you've seen ever in the flesh play football?
I'd have to go between Messi and Ronaldo. Although, funnily enough, whenever I saw Messi, which was generally in the Barcelona Celtic games, I mean, he didn't actually play that well. I mean, he scored in the game they lost at Celtic Park back in 2012, was it? When Tony Watt scored the winner. So, to me, I wouldn't choose between them two because I think they're both fantastic. And I actually interviewed Ronaldo once, and he was an absolute gent. So I probably wouldn't be able to single one of those out because I know it's the big question always, Messi or Ronaldo. But why should it be a question for me? I think we should enjoy both of them, and I think they've both got certain attributes that find it hard to separate them. Obviously, in terms of watching Scottish football for many years, I have to say Henrik Larsson was a terrific watch in his 7 years at Celtic. Doesn't make me a Celtic fan. He was just a good player. Unfortunately, I arrived in Scotland after the Laudrup Gaza era at Rangers, and that would have been pretty special to watch for sure. But yeah, Henrik was great, and he stuck around for a long time, and I'm pleased he went on to even greater things when he left in the twilight of his career because he deserved that too.
Moving on to favourite games, and I mean, you'll probably struggle even to pick out 10 from this, but if you had to pick a favourite game you've covered work-wise in England and Scotland, what would they be?
I always pick one out in England. Funnily enough, as a West Ham fan, it was a game that we were involved in and actually lost 7-1. It was at Old Trafford it was a year after they won the treble. West Ham took the lead, and then they had the chance to go 2-0 up. Obviously, this irked United somewhat, and they produced one of the best team performances I've ever seen. Scholes got a hat-trick, Beckham floated in a free kick. Just an outstanding team performance to watch. So that was pretty good. But I was lucky enough to be involved in the Football League playoffs for 4 years as well. I saw some terrific games in that, including Sheffield United Forest semi-final once that was just crazy at Bramall Lane. So many good games in that run too. In Scotland, I mean, obviously doing 60 Old Firm games, they were all fantastic. We did a 6-2 game, Martin O'Neill's first as Celtic manager. Celtic won 6-2 in 2000. Funny enough, a couple of months later, Hibs beat Hearts 6-2 in the Edinburgh derby, same season, a few weeks apart. So many games, but I think it would be hard to top two in particular. The 2016 Scottish Cup final when Hibs scored last-minute winner against Rangers, won the Cup for the first time in 114 years. Again, that's something you want to happen on your shift when you waited that long. You want to be doing the call. But funny enough, another game involving Hibs, 2010, Motherwell 6, Hibs 6. I mean, Hibs were 6-2 up with 25 minutes, maybe even less to go. Motherwell get back to 5-6. They actually miss penalty in the dying seconds, and then Lukas Jukovic scores a fantastic equaliser. So it would be hard to top a 6-6 draw because we may never see the like again, although I always live in hope. And that taught me because it was a midweek game towards the end of the season. We were all thinking, well, this might not be great. And it ended like that. And that's why I go to every game now and treat it as the same and quote that. This could be another Motherwell Hibs. You never know.
Fair enough. And I want to ask you, I don't know if you'll be able to pick this one out because there's probably been a few in your career. Is the most crucial moment, would you say, whether it's a game, whether it's a call-up or a job opportunity, what was your most crucial moment in your commentating career?
I think the biggest influence, funny enough, was probably going along to that Sky launch of the Premier League as it was and meeting Vic Wakeling, because if I hadn't gone there, it might never have happened, and for Vic and others to take a chance on me. So in terms of off the field, shall we say, that was probably it. On the field, like I say, a couple of moments I've mentioned there. It's hard because there's been so many, and with apologies to Rangers, to actually call Hibs winning the Scottish Cup, because I've got a good mate who's a Hibs fan, and I know a few others as well. You know, when you waited 114 years to win the Scottish Cup, they were becoming a running joke about not winning it. Yeah. To do it in the way that they did it with an injury time winner Obviously, it all kicked off after the game. Typically in Scotland, we couldn't even concentrate on the game afterwards. Had to concentrate on what happened with the pitch invasion afterwards. But hey, I prefer to remember the game. And actually, you're thinking at 2-2 in that game, I thought, crikey, Hibs could actually do this. And, having waited so long since 1902, I better come up with a decent line here. And thankfully, it's a line that a few people have had tattooed on them, and also ringtones galore, and somebody sang a song about it. So that's all very humbling. But all I was doing, as usual, was to just capture the moment, and what a moment it was.
It must be nice, though, when that happens.
Yeah, it's can be a bit embarrassing, to be honest, but very humbling. But yeah, I've been sent pictures of tattoos and everything, and I know there was a ringtone out of the commentary, and I know some Hibs fans still have that ringtone on their phone now, 4.5 years on. So, well, they'll probably be keeping it for life, to be fair. So yeah, it's brilliant that people react in that way, and it's just a great football story, really, that they finally got to win it, because generations of Hibs fans never got to experience anything like it. I'm not a Hibs fan, but for me, it was just a massive football moment. And another thing I remember about that day, actually, now we're talking about it, is afterwards the Hibs fans started singing their anthem, Sunshine on Leith. And I thought, right, this is going to be great telly. And for once, I did shut up and just let them sing it. It was great telly, reverberating around Hampden. I said a little bit over the instrumental in the middle, and then just let them carry on. And it's on YouTube. It's a spine-tingling bit of telly. Yeah. As I keep saying to my pals, typical, the best thing about that day was probably Sunshine on Leith. The best thing that happened was probably when I wasn't talking, typical, but there you go.
The penultimate one for me is probably one that, again, causes a bit of controversy, but you don't have to answer it if you don't want to be. Is the best manager you've interviewed, or your favourite one to speak to? Who do you feel you get the best deal out of when you're speaking to them?
Well, I was lucky enough over the years to get on with many managers. When I did the Football League in England, I made sure that I got in touch with them all pre-season. And we commentators always love to get an early shout on a team just to feel a bit prepared. And most of them were able to do that in the Championship. And some Premier League managers have been brilliant to me over the years. I mean, Steve Bruce, he's the same with everyone, to be fair. It's nothing personal. He's just so accommodating, and you can ring him up, he'll give you the team, have a good chat. And there's been a few like that over the years, and great to interview. But if I had to narrow it down, I would say interviewing Fergie for me was the best, because a lot of post-match interviews, for me, it's one of the hardest jobs on our outside broadcast, because managers are coming into it 10 minutes after something controversial might have happened in the game. Feelings are running high. It's tough. But you also know with Fergie that you've got to get it right. You've got to be on your toes here, because if you don't, he'll rightly say something. So I always enjoyed interviewing him. And I never got the hairdryer treatment, thankfully, although I did see it issued to a few others, and it was quite a watch, purely from the point of view that he just kept you on your toes. But I remember doing Bobby Robson at Newcastle once, and I thought every post-match interview should actually be like this. I said to Sir Bobby, my opening question was always a stock. I've heard people come in with an opinion. I think, I'm not sure managers want to hear your opinion straight away, so I always say, well, what did you think of the game? Bland, I know, but so ease your way in. And Bobby Robson spoke for 3 to 4 minutes about everything that happened in the game without me having to come back to ask. And I was there thinking, right, I'm going to ask you about this next. And then he'd cover it. Oh, and about that. And then I'm going to ask you about this. And I know he covered that as well. And he spoke, and he got to the end, and I just went, well, thank you, Bobby, thank you. Because I don't need to ask any more questions, because you've actually answered it all in one long question. He was a wonderful guy to interview, a great guy to deal with. Such a proper football man, but also a gentleman as well.
That's brilliant. And the final one, I guess, is coming back to you, is where do you see yourself going from here? Obviously, you seem to be very much enjoying Scottish football, working with Sky, doing Premier League as well. What do you see as the future for you in commentary?
I'm quite happy to carry on as I'm going, actually. God willing, you never know. No, I really enjoy sort of mixing the two. I love Scotland, so much so that I've moved to Scotland now, and it's a whole lot easier for getting around, that's for sure. But no, it's a beautiful part of the world. If it had a proper climate, everyone would come here. But I quite like the old misty, rainy days in Scotland myself, where you can go for long walks and this, that, and the other. So I'm quite happy to be carrying on with the Scottish. You never know in this business with the rights and everything. You could lose them, you could win them, win some, lose some. And also doing a bit of the Premier League, did a few championship games. Yep. I was trying to think the other day of the amount of competitions I've actually commentated on over the years. And I think I've one of the few who's probably done just about everything that moves, from the European stuff to tournaments to even non-league. I actually got to go back and commentate on Weymouth, my hometown club, when they played Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup replay when Sky did the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And that was special to me to work there. I would just say long may it continue, because it's an absolute blast. And to be able to do this week in, week out is just such huge fun. And like I say, that Motherwell Hibs taught me to treat every game the same. Sometimes you go to games. And I went to West Brom Sheffield United on Saturday, and people were saying, bottom two teams in the Premier League, this could be a bit dour, bit grim. We ended up with 39 attempts on goal. They both went for it. And you're thinking, what the heck are they doing down the bottom of the table? Sheffield United failed to score somehow, but should have done. But it was a decent game that I enjoyed. So I don't take anything for granted now. And you think every game there could be something special waiting around the corner. Who knows?
It's the beauty of football, and a perfect way to end. Ian, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time with us and giving up so much time in your day. So thank you for coming along and sharing your memories, and all the best for the future, of course.
And you as well. Not a problem, mate. Enjoyed the chat. Enjoyed the questions as well.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
Take care, fella.